You're fine going to the hospital alone, right? His words stung, and in my mind, I thought, if only I could send you straight to hell for saying that. My name is Leah, and I'm 9 months pregnant. It's my first time having a baby, and while I'm full of nerves, I also feel incredibly blessed to be welcoming a new life into our family. My husband, Maxim, works an office job and has weekends off, but he doesn't help much at home or with shopping. Instead, he spends almost every weekend at his parents' house. They live nearby, and even though there's no real reason for him to visit so often, he's deeply attached to them. Since I became pregnant, I've been careful about lifting heavy things. For example, when I need to buy heavy items like a bag of rice, kind friends often help me out. My daily routine is quite simple. I wake up early, make breakfast for Maxime, and see him off to work. After that, I do the cleaning, laundry, and shopping. When I get back home, I start preparing dinner. Only after finishing everything can I finally relax. While on maternity leave, I started blogging as a new hobby. Every day, I write a diary and post photos of little things that make me happy, meals I cook, the blue sky, flowers in the garden, and more. Friends and acquaintances leave kind comments, and journaling has become a small but meaningful joy in my life. One evening, as I was making dinner, Maxime came home. As usual, he tossed his bag and jacket carelessly onto the sofa. I sighed, picked them up, and hung them on the coat rack. "Welcome back," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "I made hamburgers for dinner." "I'm taking a bath," he replied curtly and walked straight to the bathroom without a second glance. It's been 3 years since we got married, and Maxime's kindness and consideration have all but disappeared. Sometimes I wonder if this is what marriage is supposed to be like. But honestly, I've given up trying to change things. When Maxime returned from his bath wearing his pajamas, I handed him a drink. "Where's the beer?" he asked, glancing at the bar. "I'm sorry," I said quickly. "I forgot to buy it today. I'll get some tomorrow." Maxime's mood shifted instantly. His expression darkened, and he snapped, "Seriously? Go to the convenience store now." I froze for a moment, his sudden anger catching me off guard. This was just another reminder of how little respect or care he had for me. I felt irritated. Why was he asking his pregnant wife to go out and buy beer? "If you want it so badly, why don't you go get it yourself?" I said. "It's hard for me to move around with this big belly." Hearing that, he became even angrier and started shouting. "You're the one who forgot to buy it. It's your job to fix that mistake. Just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you deserve special treatment. My mom always said it's important to stay active for your health." Knowing he wouldn't calm down easily when he was angry, I reluctantly decided to go to the convenience store. When I arrived, I bumped into Camille, my neighbor. "Oh, Camille. Good evening," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "Good evening, Leah. Did you forget to buy something too?" "I ran out of sauce, so I came here," Camille said, her cheerful tone lifting my spirits a little. "My husband really wanted beer, so I came to get it," I replied. "Why didn't he just go himself?" Camille asked, looking surprised. "That's exactly what I said, but he wouldn't listen," I said with a sigh. "It sounds like you're having a tough time, Leah," Camille said sympathetically. We walked together for a bit before parting ways at the crossroad. When I got home, I found Maxime lounging on the sofa, watching TV. He hadn't even cleaned up after dinner. "What took you so long? What were you doing?" "Give me the beer," he said in an annoyed tone. His rude words and insensitive attitude made my heart ache. Without saying a word, I handed him the beer and started cleaning up after dinner. How could he say such things to me, especially while I'm pregnant? I thought to myself. I wanted to say something back, but I didn't want to start another fight. So I kept quiet. After cleaning up, I ate my dinner, took a relaxing bath, and headed to bed. The next morning, Maxime acted like nothing had happened. He seemed like the type to forget everything after a good night's sleep. But I couldn't forget his words from the night before, and I chose to ignore him. "Why are you making that face so early in the morning?"
"Don't take it out on me," he said.
"I'm heading to work now, so try to be a little considerate. You know the importance of appreciation, right?" His words filled me with the urge to snap back. "That applies to you, doesn't it?" But I was too shocked and upset to say anything. All I could do was sigh deeply as I saw him off. "Be careful," I said quietly. "I won't be home for dinner tonight." "See you," he said, and left in a hurry without giving me any further explanation. After he left, I got back to my usual routine, cleaning the house and going shopping. But I couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened the night before. I decided to make something simple just for myself. As I was about to sit down and eat alone that evening, I suddenly heard Maxim at the door. Surprised, I rushed to greet him. "I'm back," he said casually. "Welcome home. But you said you didn't need dinner tonight, right?" I replied. "Yeah, but my drinking party got canceled, and now I'm hungry. You have something to eat, don't you?" I hesitated and said, "Well, I only made enough for myself today." Maxim's face immediately twisted with anger. "Didn't you even think I might come back?" "This is unbelievable," he snapped. He walked to the dining table and looked at the meal I had prepared for myself. His mood darkened further. "What do you call this? Is this even a meal?" he said, his tone full of contempt. "I seriously wonder if you're doing your job as a housewife. Don't waste the money I'm working so hard to earn." I quickly tried to calm him down. "I'm sorry. I'll prepare something for you right now. Please don't get so upset." But he interrupted me. "Maybe you should learn proper cooking from my mom. Honestly, your cooking has always been lacking." My chest tightened as I heard his words. He was comparing me to his mother again. Didn't he understand how much those comparisons hurt? "I can't eat this," he said coldly. "Go buy something." I felt my heart sink even more. "It's already late, and I've taken a bath. Can't you go buy it yourself?" I asked softly. "Forget it," he shouted. "You forgot the beer yesterday, didn't prepare dinner today. This is so frustrating. I'm going back to my parents' place." Without another word, Maxim stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. Left alone, I felt a strange sense of relief. The next morning, as I expected, I received a call from Maxim's mother. Her voice was filled with anger. "How can you not serve Maxim a proper meal? This feels like moral harassment, if not worse," she scolded. I tried to explain what had happened the night before, but she refused to listen. I ended up apologizing just to end the conversation. After hanging up, my mood sank even lower. Since Maxim wasn't home, I decided to take it easy and have a late brunch. But the thought of him coming back later that night lingered in my mind, especially after what had happened. Determined to make things better, I decided to prepare a special dinner for him. I went shopping with extra care, picking out the best ingredients and adding his favorite beer to the cart. I wanted to make a meal that would impress him and maybe earn some praise for once. To make time for cooking, I cut my blogging short. I spent hours in the kitchen, carefully preparing everything. When I was done, the table looked beautiful, as if it were set for a special occasion. Looking at the spread, I felt proud of myself. With this, he should definitely be happy, I thought. I sat in the dining room and waited for Maxim to come home. But as the hours passed, there was no sign of him. I tried calling Maxim several times on my phone, but there was no response. As time passed, I became more worried. 1 hour went by, then 2. My anxiety grew as the clock ticked. Did he go to his parents' house? I thought. Hoping to find out, I called his parents, but they said he wasn't there. I kept trying to reach him, dialing his number over and over again, but still, no answer. As midnight approached, I started thinking about contacting the police. Just then, Maxim finally came home, stumbling through the door. It was obvious he was drunk. "I'm home, hic," he slurred as he staggered inside. I rushed to the entrance, worried. "What happened? Are you okay?" I asked, seeing him lying on the hallway floor. "Too loud, go away," he mumbled angrily, glaring at me. He staggered toward the dining room, and when I tried to help him, he pushed my hand away roughly. "Don't touch me. Don't come near me, with that ugly face. To think you're my wife." His words hit me like a slap. I stood there in shock, unable to believe what I had just heard. Why would he say something so cruel? Why doesn't he care about how I feel? The pain in my chest grew as tears welled up in my eyes. I had put so much effort into cooking a nice meal for him, but it all felt meaningless now. Feeling crushed, I ate dinner alone, surrounded by silence and loneliness. The next morning, Maxim woke up as if nothing had happened. "My head hurts. I guess I drank too much," he groaned. Then, looking annoyed, he asked, "But why did you leave me lying on the hallway floor?" I looked at him, surprised by his attitude. "You chose to lie down there, Maxim." "That's not my fault," I said quietly. "Aren't you my wife? At least take care of me when I'm drunk," he snapped. His words made me wonder why he always blamed me for everything. "If you weren't going to eat at home, you could have at least told me. I prepared a nice dinner, and I called you so many times. Why didn't you answer?" Maxim shrugged, his tone cold. "The drinking party I was supposed to go to the other day got moved to last night. Do I have to report every little thing to you? Besides, it's hard to pick up the phone during a gathering. Think about my situation." With every word he said, my heart grew colder. My expectations of him were disappearing bit by bit. If I stop expecting anything from him, maybe I won't feel hurt or disappointed anymore. As these thoughts circled in my mind, I told him, "I'm taking a break. Tomorrow, I'm going back to my parents' house." Maxim didn't seem to care. "Being with you lately feels unpleasant and boring," he said, brushing off my words. His dismissive attitude made me think more seriously about divorce. With a baby due soon, I felt a mix of sadness and anticipation. My heart raced, not knowing what the future held. I've heard stories from friends about how painful labor can be, but my excitement to meet the baby inside me has always been stronger than those fears. The neighbors often encourage me with kind words like, "It's just a little while longer," which lifts my spirits. One evening, after Maxim came home, he surprised me with a suggestion. "Hey, let's go on a family trip soon," he said. "Really? A trip?" But I began, feeling a bit unsure. "I'm talking about a family trip with my mom and dad," he added. I was taken aback. Why would his parents suggest something like this now? There's always been tension between me and Maxim's parents. Anytime there's an issue involving Maxim, they somehow blame me, like the recent phone call incident. The idea of traveling with them felt strange, especially so close to my due date. "I'm about to give birth soon," I said cautiously. "Traveling far might be risky." Maxim dismissed my concerns. "How many times do I have to tell you? Just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you're sick. My parents are being thoughtful by inviting us." "But what if something happens?" I asked. "It'll be fine. Everything's already planned. We're going for 2 nights and 3 days next week," he said firmly. "What? Next week is my due date. That's cutting it too close. Just do as you're told and prepare for the trip." "End of discussion," he said before leaving the room. I was left feeling uneasy and unsure about what to do. The next day, I confided in a close friend and explained the situation. She was clearly worried and said, "That's way too much to ask of you. You need to put yourself and the baby first." I tried to figure out how to refuse the trip, but before I knew it, the day had arrived. "I'm not feeling well today," I told Maxim. "I'm worried about the baby, so I think I'll stay home and rest." Maxim wasn't convinced. "You can rest in the car. It's not a big deal. Just bring your luggage. We're going to my parents' house, so hurry up." As I climbed into the car, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. "Are you sure this is okay?" I asked nervously. After loading the luggage, I sat in the passenger seat. Suddenly, I felt something warm around my feet. Looking down, I saw water spreading. "Oh no," I thought. "Maxim, my water just broke." I said urgently, "Please take me to the hospital right now." Maxim froze for a moment, shocked. "Are you serious?" "Yes. The baby is coming. We need to go to the hospital immediately," I said, panicking. As I tried to keep calm, Maxim grabbed a towel and started wiping the water in the car. Then he did something completely unbelievable. He opened the passenger door and said, "Get out." "What?" I gasped in shock. "Maxim, we need to go to the hospital now. You're making a mess in the car. Get out," he insisted. "Are you serious right now?" I cried, completely stunned. "Yes," I said, "get out. I need to clean the car first." Before I could protest further, he grabbed me and pulled me out of the car. I stood there, in disbelief, unable to comprehend what was happening. Maxim said angrily, "I can't believe this. We were supposed to be on a family trip. Just go to the hospital by yourself." I was too shocked to respond.
Wait.
"How can you leave me here like this?" I called out to him, but he ignored me and drove away, leaving me behind. Feeling overwhelmed, I quickly called for an ambulance. Just then, someone approached me and said, "Leah, are you okay?" It was Camille, my neighbor, looking concerned. She immediately understood what was happening and quickly arranged for a special taxi to take me to the hospital. She stayed by my side, comforting me the entire time. Tears rolled down my face as I realized how much her kindness meant to me. Thanks to Camille, I arrived safely at the hospital. On the way there, she held my hand and encouraged me, staying with me until I was taken to a room. As I was being transferred, I made a silent promise to myself, Maxim will pay for this. Even as the labor pains grew stronger, Camille held my hand, refusing to leave my side. She also contacted my parents, who rushed to the hospital and arrived looking deeply worried. Camille whispered something to them before the three of them stepped out of the room to talk. As the contractions became more intense, my phone vibrated from across the room. "Who is it?" I asked. My parents glanced at the screen and said, "It's Maxim." They looked displeased, but I decided to take the call. The moment I answered, Maxim's panicked voice came through. "Help me," he said, sounding desperate. But I was in no mood to talk to him. Without saying anything, I hung up. My parents turned off my phone, but Maxim kept sending messages. I ignored everything as the labor pains took all my focus. Finally, I was moved to the delivery room. After what felt like forever, I heard the sweet sound of my baby's first cries. Exhausted but relieved, I saw my parents and Camille standing nearby with warm smiles. I closed my eyes, feeling comforted by their presence, and drifted off to sleep. When I woke up a few hours later, I found myself lying in a hospital bed. Rubbing my eyes, I noticed my parents sitting next to me, their faces full of concern. "Are you okay?" my mom asked gently. I nodded, still feeling tired and unable to sit up. My dad, looking emotional, wiped away tears as my mom consoled him. "The postpartum period can be exhausting," she said softly. Seeing their love and concern brought a smile to my face. "How's the babies?" I asked. My parents told me that the baby was undergoing some tests, but would be brought back soon. I noticed Camille wasn't there and glanced around, wondering where she had gone. Sensing my unspoken question, my mom said, "Camille left a little while ago." Thinking about everything Camille had done for me, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. I promised my parents that once I was discharged, I would visit Camille to thank her properly. When I turned on my phone to share the news of the baby's birth with my friends, I saw an overwhelming number of missed calls. Most of them were from Maxim. For a moment, I stared at the screen, stunned by the sheer number of calls. But instead of feeling hopeful or curious, I felt nothing. I had no expectations left for him. I closed the notifications without a second thought. Later, one of my friends came to visit me in the hospital to congratulate me on the baby's birth. She was genuinely happy for me and gave me her heartfelt wishes. As we chatted, I opened up to her about everything that had happened with Maxim. She listened with shock and anger. Half-jokingly, she said she wanted to punish him for his behavior. But she also reminded me to focus on my health and get plenty of rest. After chatting for a while, she left, leaving me feeling a little lighter. My parents, who had already been briefed by Camille about the entire situation, asked me gently, "What are you planning to do next?" I shared my thoughts about my relationship with Maxim and told them I was considering divorce. They listened carefully, respected my decision, and assured me of their full support. When I was discharged from the hospital, I planned to stay at my parents' house. They had already prepared a room for me and the baby. Meanwhile, I learned that Maxim had come to the hospital to visit, but since I had informed the staff that I didn't want to see him, they didn't let him in. The next day, Camille came to visit me in my hospital room, holding a fruit basket. "Camille, you came," I exclaimed happily. "You seem to be recovering well," she said with a warm smile. but make sure you don't overwork yourself. Postpartum fatigue can be serious, she advised. Her words comforted me, and I let out a sigh of relief as I took the fruit basket from her. Camille, thank you so much for everything. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been there, I said sincerely, bowing my head deeply. Camille chuckled gently. What matters most is that you and the baby are healthy, she said. That's all I care about. I'll never forget your kindness, I said. Once things settle down, I'll come over to thank you properly. Camille smiled warmly. You know, she began, I told my husband about what happened. He wasn't happy about it. Hearing that, I felt a hint of unease, realizing how upset her husband might be. Camille, I'm really sorry for dragging you into this mess, I said, feeling guilty. Don't worry about it, she replied. But remember, you owe me for more than just this. Do you know who helped Maxim get his job at the company where he works now? Her words surprised me, and for the first time, I heard a stern tone in Camille's usually gentle voice. Camille was actually the wife of the CEO at Maxim's company. When we first moved to this neighborhood, I had no idea about her position. Over time, as we bumped into each other at the supermarket or convenience store, we became friends. Later, we started enjoying tea together regularly, and during those moments, we grew closer. I learned about Camille's husband's job over time, but my husband, Maxim, had no idea about it. This was because he didn't come with me when we first greeted the neighbors and didn't like interacting with them at all. Camille had once told me, I don't want to cause any trouble, so please don't tell your husband. I respected her request and kept it to myself. Knowing I was pregnant and dealing with Maxim's unreasonable behavior, Camille had suggested more than once, should I talk to my husband about this? But I always said no. I didn't want to trouble her or involve her husband. However, after everything that happened recently, it seemed even Camille had reached her limit. That's probably why Maxim kept calling her. Camille, I really can't thank you enough for everything, I said, feeling overwhelmed by gratitude. Her strong words reminded me how lucky I was to have someone like her who was willing to go to such lengths for me. Tears welled up in my eyes, and seeing me so emotional, Camille gave me a warm smile. Leah, you're a dear friend to me. I can't just stand by and do nothing when something like this happens to a friend, she said. Our conversation was filled with sincere words and smiles, but the messages from my husband didn't stop. Despite the endless notifications, I ignored them all. Thinking about the divorce cleared my mind. All I wanted was to focus on how I could move forward with my baby and create a peaceful life for us. As I was getting ready to leave the hospital, a close friend came to visit me. She handed me her phone and said, "You need to see this." On her phone was a post that had gone viral on a popular social media platform. Curious, I asked her what it was about. She explained that she had posted about my husband's recent actions online. My friend had a huge following on social media, and one of her followers had replied to her post. That follower had, by chance, recorded a video of the scene where my husband yelled at me and forced me out of the car. The follower, wanting to protect my privacy, blurred my face in the video and, with my friend's permission, shared it online. The video spread quickly, and soon people identified my husband and even the company he worked for. What? I had no idea it had gone this far, I said, shocked. Smiling gently, my friend said, "Well, they brought it upon themselves, didn't they?" It was clear to me now that my husband's actions and the consequences he was facing were a result of his own choices. One of Maxim's friends had apparently confronted him about the situation. My husband tried to defend himself, saying, "I had a prior travel commitment with my parents that day. I had no choice but to let things play out." Because of what had happened, not only was my husband facing criticism online, but his parents were too. The story spread quickly, even in the neighborhood where my in-laws lived. On social media, people were talking about my husband's behavior, and even his parents became a topic of discussion. Suddenly, my phone started ringing. When I checked, I saw it was a call from my mother-in-law. My friend, looking at the screen with interest, suggested, "Why don't you pick up and give her a piece of your mind?" But I was so tired of it all. I didn't even have the energy to argue. I decided to ignore the call. Soon, my missed calls log was filled with calls from my husband, my father-in-law, and my mother-in-law. Since the incident went viral on social media, even the hospital staff seemed to know about my situation. They treated me with genuine kindness and support. Whenever my husband or in-laws tried to visit or call, the hospital staff made sure they couldn't contact me. As my discharge date got closer, I had one big worry. What if my husband and in-laws were waiting outside the hospital? My parents reassured me. "You have nothing to worry about," they said. But the thought of my baby being in danger made me anxious. On the day of my discharge, my parents were helping me pack my things when I suddenly heard my husband's voice shouting, "Leah," followed by the loud voices of my in-laws. Before I could panic, a group of men in black suits appeared out of nowhere and surrounded me, creating a protective barrier. Confused, I watched as one of the men gently opened the car door and said, "Don't worry. We're here on sir's request to protect you." It seemed my parents were already aware of this. My mom smiled and said, "Didn't I tell you there's nothing to worry about?" Hearing her words, I felt relieved. I got into the car smoothly while my husband and in-laws, clearly intimidated by the bodyguards, didn't dare come closer. I can't even begin to express how grateful I felt toward Camille for arranging all of this. She went above and beyond to protect me and my baby. The only thought in my mind was how I could repay her kindness. My parents felt the same way. "We need to find a way to show Camille our gratitude," they said in unison. As I started my new life with my baby, things were peaceful and smooth. However, the calls and messages from my husband and in-laws didn't stop. I mailed the divorce papers to Maxim, but he refused to acknowledge them. One day, my in-laws called my parents' house. My father answered the phone. They arrogantly said, "She's part of our family now, so no matter how she's treated, she shouldn't complain." My father, angry at their audacity, responded sharply. "That's unacceptable," he retorted. It seemed my in-laws didn't expect such a strong response. They quickly hung up the phone. Later, as I sat with my parents discussing how to handle this situation, I realized I had the strength and support I needed to move forward. I decided that getting help from a professional was the best thing to do, so I resolved to consult a lawyer. Coincidentally, my father knew a lawyer, and when we explained the situation, he kindly offered to help. I told the lawyer about the video circulating online and shared all the past events with him. When the lawyer contacted my husband on my behalf, Maxim seemed surprised at first. However, he quickly became defensive and said, "We can solve our marital issues ourselves. We don't need a lawyer." The lawyer, staying calm, replied, "I'm here because Leah asked me to be. From now on, any communication should go through me. It's up to my client, Leah, to decide if she wants legal involvement." Maxim didn't seem to know how to respond. Although he initially refused to divorce, the mention of mediation and the possibility of going to court clearly made him uneasy. When the lawyer brought up the idea of court proceedings, Maxim reluctantly agreed to the divorce. "I don't care about the child and have no plans to see them in the future, so why should I pay child support?" he said coldly. "As for dividing property, I didn't do anything wrong, so I don't see why I should give up anything." His words were ridiculous, but the lawyer calmly explained the legal aspects of the situation. Even then, Maxim seemed unconvinced. "If that's how you feel, then we'll see each other in court," the lawyer replied firmly. Hearing this, my in-laws, who were listening in, panicked. They immediately agreed to the divorce and didn't want to go to court. When the lawyer told me about this, I felt a deep sense of disappointment. I couldn't believe I had once married such a man. Since moving back to my parents' house, I had been staying in touch with Camille. When I told her about the recent developments, she laughed playfully and said, "Why not go after your ex-husband's retirement pay? Garnishing wages is always an option." I couldn't help but smile, feeling both overwhelmed and impressed by Camille's cleverness. Not long after, the lawyer contacted me again. He said that Maxim wanted to apologize in person. Wanting to resolve everything properly, I agreed to speak with him over the phone under the lawyer's supervision. On the day of the scheduled call, I was with my parents and the lawyer. When I answered, I heard Maxim's voice on the other end. "Finally, you pick up. Apologize now, and I'll forgive you. Come back home, and let's be a couple again. The house is a mess. I might lose my job, and everyone is treating me badly. It's all your fault, so take responsibility. He continued to throw accusations at me, blaming me for everything. I listened quietly, staying calm and deciding how to respond. When I didn't reply right away, he said mockingly, "See? You can't even say anything. You're truly a woman with no redeeming qualities." That's when I finally spoke up. "Just so you know, this conversation is being recorded. I'll be keeping it as evidence."
Goodbye.
There was a pause, and then I heard the panic in his voice.
Wait.
"You're recording this? That's not fair." I calmly hung up, feeling a sense of relief. "I was just joking.
I'm sorry.
I can't live without you. Let's start over. We really loved each other, didn't we?" "I promise I'll do better from now on," Maxim said desperately over the phone. After hearing those words, I immediately hung up. With the recording of Maxim's call in hand, I gave it to my lawyer and asked, "Can this audio be used as evidence?" The lawyer shook his head in disbelief and said, "He really is an incorrigible man." My parents, feeling the same way, firmly decided to cut all ties with Maxim. His behavior didn't just make them angry, it left them deeply disappointed and astonished. At some point, I realized I was finding a small, mischievous satisfaction in seeing the drama unfold. Maybe it was the little devilish side of me enjoying a sense of justice. The divorce proceedings went smoothly. The agreements for property division and child support were finalized without any problems. Slowly, the chaos began to settle down. Thanks to Camille sharing the details of what happened with her husband, who was the president of Maxim's company, Maxim faced immediate consequences. Camille's husband, who valued family above all else, believed that an employee who couldn't protect his own family couldn't be trusted. As a result, Maxim lost his job. Without steady income, he couldn't keep up with his housing loan payments and ended up moving back in with his parents. His reputation was completely ruined by the viral video, and he struggled to find stable work, barely scraping by with short-term, low-paying jobs. Rumors about his parents also spread in their neighborhood. From what I heard from Camille's friends, they now lived in constant unease, facing cold judgment from the people around them. Seeing how society treated them made me realize that this social backlash was perhaps even harder for them to endure than any legal punishment. With everything settled and my health improving, my parents, my baby, and I visited Camille's home to thank her. Camille and her husband welcomed us warmly, showering my baby with affection and making us feel truly cared for. During the visit, Camille and my mother quickly became good friends. Similarly, Camille's husband and my father got along very well. Over time, our families grew close, sharing a bond built on kindness and support. As life continued, something completely unexpected happened. Camille and her husband's son, who was around my age, and I started to develop a connection. A few years later, the thought that I might actually become part of Camille's family was something no one could have predicted. Life, as I learned, is full of surprises.